Hi, welcome. And my name is Nicole Haugen. I am a grief coach. And today I'm going to be talking about 3 tips to get you through the holidays with grief. So, when we have grief, hold on, I'm going to share my screen here and then we'll get started. Oh, if the chat is enabled so you can talk with each other, you can chat. Let me know, wh who you've recently lost and where you're from if you want. And feel free to talk and chat in the comments. And then if you have a question at all, I will answer questions at the end, hopefully, if I get to it. If not, I can always send you an email to answer your question. Okay, so now this. All right, so like I said, welcome. This is 3 tips to get you through the holidays with grief. So this time of year, there's a lot of things happening. The seasons change around here. It gets really dark really early. That's most places, right? It starts to get dark and it just feels very gloomy. It's colder, right? It just feels not great to begin with. There's a seasonal depression. And then when you add on grief on top of it, that makes it more difficult. And then you add on the surplus of events and gatherings. And then on top of that, people say things that they think are helpful, but they are really not. So grief can be physically exhausting. It can cause fatigues, aches, and pains. It can suppress your immune system and digestive issues, all on top of all the extra stress that comes this time of year. And so whether you're going through a recent loss and you're in that numb, shocked phase, or if you are in the phase where things are starting to really trigger you and upset you, and you're not sure how to handle it, you've come to the right place. So, my name is Nicole Haugen. I have been a nurse for over 15 years. I'm also a wife. I've been married for over 15 years, and I'm a mom. I have 6 girls and they age ranges are 15. No, that's just kidding. She is 14 down to 5. And so busy, busy mom. And I have mostly worked as a nurse in hospice, and that is my passion. That is kind of my favorite nursing of all. And so I have a lot of experience with death and dying. Professionally, I have helped people. I have basically been a coach before I knew what a coach was, helping loved ones, family members get their loved one through the death and dying process. And then in 2019, my dad, he had been diagnosed 10 years previously with cancer. It was prostate cancer, but when they found it, it already metastasized to the bones. And so in the spring of 2019, he stopped responding to treatments. We knew that it was time. He came onto hospice services and he died about 3 or 4 months later, 3 or 4 months later in the end of July in 2019. And then, so that was an expected death. It was sad, but he had a lot of pain in the end. And so we were relieved in a way that he was no longer suffering, right? We missed him and we were sad, but we were glad that he was no longer in such pain. And then about 4 months, 4.5 months after that, at the beginning of December, my mom died very suddenly. I live in North Dakota, and so it was storming the evening she came home. It was storming. The way her driveway is set up, there was water all around it. Like basically you come over a hill and it looks like water and a tiny road going through the water. And so that evening, it was storming, there was some snow, and as the wind blew, it was pushing the snow across the road, so it just looked like all snow. And so she turned, what we later found out she turned, what she thought was turning into her driveway. She missed the road and turned onto the water, and her car was submerged in water. Um, we realized she was missing, so my brother called the authorities. They came out. It took about a day or so to find the tire tracks because by then the wind had stopped and shifted, could see the tire tracks. So then they proceeded to search for her body. And granted, it's like -50-degree weather at that point in time. So it took a while. They then found her car. It took a while, hours, about a day and a half or so, to pull her car out of the water. And once they pulled out of the car out of the water, they realized that her body was not in it. So she was trying to escape, trying to get out. And so it took another day or so to find her body in the water. And so throughout all that time, it it was so shocking. It was so tragic. You're just trying to cope day to day. And that Christmas, right? So she died. They found her body on December 12th. We had the funeral about a week later, and then the week after that was Christmas. And so the first Christmas, it was just numb. Like you were just kind of going through the motions. And then so I know that that numb stage is like, and then um it wasn't until about a year or so later that it started to hit me more around the holiday time. And January, the month after my mom died, I found out that my husband had financial infidelity in our marriage. There were multiple credit cards, there was a lot of debt due to his addiction of baseball card collecting, sports memorabilia, collectibles that I had no clue about. And so with that came a grief that I didn't even know you could grieve something like that, but it was that unmet expectations, grieving of the loss of the marriage I thought I had. And after that, I found life coaching, and it was pretty much through anger that I decided, like, I'm going to sign up for something. I'm going to do something for myself. And I decided I'm going to lose weight. So I did that. I lost 40 pounds really quickly. But then I started to realize, like, all the grief that came up with my weight loss journey, with my food journey. When you're not coping with something, thoughts and feelings start to come up that you've been trying to push down. And so I started to navigate that grief. And so what I realized is I have a lot of experience in unexpected grief, in anticipatory grief, in expected and unexpected grief, and grief around things that are not a loved one dying, right? So, like grief of unmet expectations, whether that be maybe a relationship, a friendship, a job. There's grief that comes up in many other ways. And then also professionally, right? Like I was a hospice nurse, and so I've also met grief through professionalism with work and different things through that. And so now I realize that grief is pretty much my powerhouse, my wheelhouse. And so I want to help others with their grief through their grief. So that's a little bit about me. And when we have grief, there are things that are expected triggers that I would say we normalize those, right? So those are the things that I knew I heard people talk about, that I knew talking with others and being a nurse, like I knew that the first year was going to be hard. I knew that the first holidays, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the death anniversaries, important dates, right? Like certain songs, like I knew those were going to trigger me. And so I could prepare for those as best as I could. And with those, they were very hard. And oftentimes I found myself almost more anxious, overwhelmed, and upset the days leading up to the date itself. So I'm like, okay, like December 12th is going to be hard. I know that, but I would find myself like the week before, just like on edge and anxious. And so that was something that I was not expecting. And then also, I was not expecting so many unexpected triggers. And that is really what I want to talk about and focus on today, because an unexpected trigger is really anything outside of you that causes you more grief. And so it's something that's like a physical, a tangible thing that triggers you. It can be seeing a picture, it can be a song that triggers like that. It could be a smell. Smells are a very powerful thing in our lives, and it can trigger grief. And unexpected triggers are when you were coping and then all of a sudden something outside of you, right? We all have grief that we go through, that we kind of run through our mind, but it's when something outside of us triggers that grief. And so again, it could be like a movie or a song or a smell, or walking through the store and you see your dad's favorite candies this time of year. Like it's something that you're like, whoa, and it just hits you. And so in this like that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to give you 3 tips to go through this as they come up. Okay. And so tip number 1 is, this is something that I found to be so powerful, and it's so simple, is to name the feeling that you're having. And so what I mean by this, right? For me, for an example, it was after my mom had died, and I was in the grocery store, and there was a woman, and she looked exactly like my mom. I saw her from behind, so I didn't see her face in the beginning. She was walking, she was pushing a shopping cart, and her hair was the exact same, like thickness, the same color, the same style, the same everything as my mom's. Her body shape and build was the same as my mom's. She was wearing a jean jacket that I swear my mom had the exact same one, even down to her shoes. Like her shoes were the same kind of shoes my mom wore. Her walk was very much like my mom's walk. And I thought it was my mom. I thought it was my mom. And I was filled with such excitement, such joy, such hope at, oh, mom. And then I realized it wasn't my mom. And I was crushed. I was devastated. And this trigger that I saw, it was very unexpected. And it felt like I was being attacked. It felt like an attack to my system. It's felt especially like an attack to my system, the way that I was at such a high and then such a low. And the way our brains are made is that it feels like you are going to die. This feels like such an attack on your system. It feels like a tiger is attacking you and you're going to die, and you have to like fight, flight, or freeze. And so when you're in moments like that, and again, these things are they are unexpected, especially in the beginning. You really don't know what's going to upset you, what's not. As you go through and you have some time underneath you, I think that's why people like to say time heals all things. It doesn't heal it completely, but I think that we are able to cope more and know what triggers us. And so we start to heal that way. We are able to protect ourselves more and put ourselves in situations that are less triggering, or prepare ourselves for when things are triggering. And so when you feel so unexpectedly attacked like this, I want you to focus on breathing, just breathing. I want you to just pause. So for me, like I was in the grocery store, right? I just paused where I was at, and you can take 10 seconds. Nobody's even going to notice, okay, for 10 seconds. I want you to just pause, and I want you to focus on your breathing. I want you to close your eyes if you need to, if that helps you focus. I want you to focus on the air coming in your nose and out of your nose. I want you to focus on, what does it feel like? Does it feel cooler as it goes in? Does it feel a little warmer as it goes out? Maybe there's something that you're smelling as you're breathing in. When you breathe this way, it helps calm down your nervous system. Another thing, firefighters do this. is called box breathing. And so what you do is you picture a box in your mind. And so you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you exhale for 5 seconds. No, okay, hold on. Breathe in, hold, exhale, hold until you picture this box as you go around. Okay. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And so that is box breathing. And so it really brings you back into the present moment and not focusing on all the feelings that are coming up. And then as you're breathing, and maybe you can't do this right in the moment when you're in the grocery store, but maybe you're just like, you know what? Like, this is too intense. I'm just leaving. I will get groceries later. I want you either to go back out in your car, or if this happens at work, or if this happens if you're out in public, like it's at the grocery store, I want you then to, as soon as you're able to, find a place where you can just reflect back on that moment. And I want you to ask yourself, like, what was I feeling? And a feeling is different than a thought. Okay. So when we ask people how they're feeling, they tend to want to say, well, I feel like this because of this, right? And when we give ourselves thoughts. I want you to describe the feeling. So for me, the feeling was crushed. It was despair. It was hopelessness. Okay. And if you need to, there's feelings wheels out there that gives you hundreds of emotions. I want you to pick the one that you felt in that moment. And when you give your feeling a name, we then feel like we have some power over it. It gives us back that control. We realize it's not just us like being crazy and floating out there in like la la land, like, I don't know what's happening. It's like, no, I feel crushed. Of course, I would feel that way. And when I feel crushed, like, this is what happens and this is why. And like, oh yes, I felt crushed. I felt I felt devastated that that wasn't my mom. I felt so sad all over again that I can never hug her. I can never hear her voice in this lifetime. I can never run up to her again and talk to her. I can never call her on the phone. And so I know in that moment, like, I was devastated. And so once I name that feeling, it's like, yes, that's what I feel. I feel devastated. And then that leads us to tip number two. And so tip number two is to allow the feeling. And so by allowing the feeling, a lot of times we we want to push feelings away. Okay, that is our natural inclination. Our brain tells us that if we don't feel the feeling, we can avoid it and we'll be better off. But what really happens is whatever you don't feel comes up in other ways. And so you're really not avoiding it. It's just coming up in ways that are maybe not good. Like for me, it was a lot of times I would yell at my husband or I would lash out at my kids. Um, and so that's not how I wanted to show up. And so anytime you, and I'm going to walk this with you, but when we allow the feeling, it goes away in 60 to 90 seconds. And that's it. It's really such a small amount of time. And we spend so much trying to push it away and avoid it that we get stuck in it and we feel that way for the rest of the day, or maybe 2 days, or maybe a week or more. And it's just this feeling that we can't get out of and we don't know what to do. And it just feels horrible. And so when you allow the feeling, first, again, you name it. So for me, okay, I felt devastated. When I felt devastated, I felt a tightness in my chest. It felt like my muscles were constricted and like I couldn't breathe. It radiated into my shoulders. Like I feel most things, I carry most stress and all that in my shoulders. And so it radiates into my shoulders. And I think I literally like just felt like hunched over because I felt that like the pressure in my chest and then the tightness in my shoulders just like it just physically almost pushed me down. And and then it radiated into just I want to say it was like a looming feeling, like it just felt like it hung around. And it almost was like when you see like the gray cloud coming through a storm from a storm, and it was just like it was there. It was right there, and it just felt so heavy, so dark. Like when the sun is blotted out because like the gray comes, right? Like that's that's what it felt like. It felt like the sun was gone, the grayness is coming, there's that loomingness. And so when I sit with that, when you sit with your feelings and you don't push it away, it'll go away in 60 to 90 seconds. And then the other thing that I think people often think is with grief, like, okay, I felt that, like now I should never feel that again. And I think it's we think that often, not just with grief, but it'll keep coming up. And so for me, a lot of times anger. I felt very angry. I felt angry at what had happened. I felt angry at how gypped I felt. And so I had to keep processing this every time that it came up. Every time that something would make me feel that way, right? Like maybe it was even something expected, like the death anniversary. Like every time I would sit with it, it would go away. And then maybe it would be a day later, I'd feel it again. Maybe it'd be then 20 minutes later, I'd feel it again. And so I just want you to know that how normal that is, how grief bounces up and down and all around. And this is so normal. I want people to start normalizing grief. Not wallow in it, not use it as excuses for sometimes how we show up for others in our lives, but to make it normal. To know, like, yeah, of course, this is how it is. Because I think a lot of times people are like, well, it's been a year. Like, ugh, why are you still so upset? It's been 6 months. Like, grief knows no timeline. And so these feelings are so normal. But when we allow them, we allow ourselves to move through grief faster. It becomes less intense every time. It helps us cope a little bit faster. Now, it doesn't mean that, of course, we're going to forget our loved one and that, okay, great. Now I'm back to how it always was. That doesn't happen because when you lose somebody, when your marriage is struggling, when you lose a job, that there's always that hole there. Sometimes that hole gets minuscule and very small, and sometimes there's always going to be a hole there, but you know how to navigate life with that hole. So the next tip is to make a plan. Okay, so we talk about naming the feeling, allowing the feeling, and now we're going to talk about making a plan, especially with the holidays. Okay, because the holidays now, there are a lot of other things coming up. So, first and foremost, keep it simple and easy. Okay, we so often think that others should know what we need, and we get upset with them and angry with them when we don't even know ourselves. Okay. Also, people say so many cliche things that make us feel worse. And especially when you know, okay, I'm going to be going to all these gatherings, all these events, and people are going to say things like, it makes us want to hide in a hole and just skip over the rest of December and be like, okay, I'm going to reemerge in the new year. And that's not good, right? Like, that's not good because then we're just pushing those feelings away. And it can cause us to really increase our anger and despair when we start to do that. So, for gathering and events, we're going to decide, we're going to have a plan, and then I'm going to talk to you about how to handle the looks in the comments that will come. Okay, so for deciding, I always tell people when we are deciding for ourselves. I don't want you to decide because, well, this is how we've always done it. I'll feel guilty. They're counting on me. Okay. Those are lies that we tell ourselves. And so for me, a lot of times in those first year, 2 year, year three, okay, we're coming up on year 5 now. This is Christmas 5 without both my parents. And so in those first few years, I would dread going to things that had family members that reminded me of my mom and dad. So my dad's brother, he is still alive and he looks so much like my dad. I mean, there's differences, but there are so many similarities. The way that he talks, his movement, his body shape. When you give him a hug, he feels like it's like hugging my dad. And that was very hard. My mom is one of five girls, and so her oldest sister has passed away. She passed away, not too long after my mom, but now there's three of them still left. And when I am around them, like those first few holidays, like it was extremely hard. I wanted to be there. I love my family. I wanted to be with loved ones, but it was also so sad because when I saw my aunts, like there were two people missing, like the other two sisters weren't there. And so it felt like this gaping hole because there was a gaping hole, right? Like those two were no longer there to share and be with us. And so that was hard. Um, Also, I knew that I would feel this way. I didn't want to feel this way. And I didn't want to say anything to them because I didn't want to upset them, right? They can't help like how they look, how they act. I know like a lot of my mannerisms and stuff are like my mom. And so I'm sure I trigger other people. My handwriting is pretty similar to hers. And so we can decide if we want to show up at these things or not. And again, in the very beginning, I wanted to, but I didn't want to. And I'd be like, okay, well, we have to go. We have to go. They're expecting us. And my husband would be like, why? Why do we have to go? And for me, I just was shocked because I've always done holidays with my families. That's been a very big part of my upbringing. For him, it was not so much. They just would have small gatherings and just a few of them, and they come together for a few hours, and that was it. Um, so for me, it was like unexpected that you would do anything different. Like, why would you do anything different? And so that is what I came to realize was like that I pretty early on, and again, it was by him being like, well, why don't we just stay home? Was even the switch and the pivot from, no, we have to go, people are expecting us, to, no, really, I truly want to go. I really did. I wanted to go. And so deciding that for yourself, do I really want to go? And also knowing that I might make a decision to go, and then the day of, I might have to back out. Right? We think that when we make a decision, it's set in stone, and well, now we can't back out. Like now people are expecting us. Like set it up so you can back out if you need to. Do not like Thanksgiving just was here. Don't sign up to bring the turkey. Sign up to bring a side that if they don't have it, it's not going to be a big deal. So, or say, hey, I'm not going to bring anything, or maybe even bring like, I don't know, punch or a pop or something that, like, again, is not really missed, or people will survive if they do not have it. And at the end of the day, people will survive if they don't have green bean casserole on Thanksgiving. People will survive if they don't have turkey on Thanksgiving because that's what you signed up and you just can't show up. Okay, so I want you to recognize that and allow yourself that also. I also want you to decide from a place of understanding if your joy of being there will outweigh your discomfort. And so for me, that's why I decided to go because I knew I was going to be uncomfortable. I knew I was going to feel sad. I knew it was going to be painful, but I really did want to go see my family. And so that is what helped me in my decision. I also want you to know, like, if you're a hard yes, that's okay. You don't have to change your mind. You don't have to feel guilted into anything. Same with if you're a hard no. You don't have to change your mind. And especially when you give your answer to people, and a lot of times people, again, they mean well, but it can leave you feeling very guilty of why you're saying no. And so I want you to come up and even write it down, journal it out. Like, of your why. Either why am I going or why am I not going? And that'll help you be very calm and rational about your decision. Okay. So having a plan, we're going to talk about if you're planning on going. This can also work if you're planning on staying home. Okay. But we're going to talk about first, like if you're planning on going to a family gathering, an event. Okay. So I want you to come up with like, what are some expected triggers? So for me, it was sometimes the way my aunts would laugh or the way my uncle would talk. And so like I knew there's gonna be moments where like I might just be triggered like in the middle of conversation. And so I want you to have a plan around that. I want you to plan out in very big details like what time am I going? What time do I plan to leave? What do I do if there is a trigger and I'm like, I need to get out of here right now? Does that mean I need to drive myself? Does that mean I need to have money on hand? So if I need to get an Uber, does that mean I need to ask maybe somebody else who's going to drive me, but then to say, hey, when I say I need to go, like, please don't act like I really need to leave. Like, can you be that person for me? And if they can't, that means planning and finding somebody else who can. Um, how often do I need to check in with myself? A lot of times in the beginning, it was every 15, 20 minutes. I'd be like, okay, like, how am I feeling? What do I need? As time has gone on and I've gotten better at knowing what triggers and knowing what I need, like I don't need to check in with myself as often. I check in myself with myself maybe once that day. Like for example, for yesterday for Thanksgiving, 2 days ago, Thanksgiving, um, I was going along fine. It was fine. And I had prepared, right? This is what I'm gonna do. This is what if I get upset, this is where I'm gonna go. I'll go in the bathroom. I'll ask my husband to come watch the food. Like that, I had a plan. And um, everything was good until there was a moment after people were leaving, and then we were gonna go do something else. And there was like a little bit of lull. And in that lull of time, because I was very busy in the beginning, I got very sad. I got really sad that Thanksgiving looked different this year than some other years. I got very sad that my parents weren't there. I got very sad that sometimes um, people are just different, right? So like my husband's family is very different than my family. And so I just got sad that my kids don't experience the way my parents were. They experience this. And that doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means I'm sad about it. And so I want to give yourself permission to realize that like it doesn't mean like anything's gone wrong. That doesn't mean you have to change those people. It just means like I'm being triggered right now. I'm having a feeling. What does that mean? I also planned to have water throughout the day because I know also when I get very emotional, like we forget to take care of ourselves. And so what does that look like for you? Maybe that means I'm going to fill up a water jug and I'm going to bring that along. Maybe it means I am going to take a nap. Even if people are at my house, I'm going to just be like, okay, like I'll be back in 30 minutes and I'm going to go take a nap. And like nobody needs to know, right? You probably don't even have to say I'll be back in 30 minutes. You probably can just go lay down. A lot of times people don't notice you as much as we think they do. So another thing I did was I planned my food. I tend to emotionally eat. I think a lot of people tend to emotionally eat or emotionally drink. And so for me, I'm not a drinker really, but I will stuff my face full of food and then I'll feel miserable, which will then trigger other feelings, which then make me angry, which will trigger something else. So I planned out my food for the day. I knew I was going to have one piece of pie. I knew I was going to have small portions. I knew I was going to eat slowly and I was going to stop when I was full. It also, again, helped to have water throughout the day. So those were ways that I could take care of myself when I knew that it was a day full of expected triggers and unexpected triggers. And so then oftentimes I want to talk about what people say when or what to say when people make comments. And so in the beginning, when you're grieving, people say things like, well, it's been 3 months. Well, they're in a better place. Um, well, did you know, like, what did you find out about this? Right? Like people are naturally nosy. So in the beginning, there's a lot of looks, the head tilts is how are you? Like the the pity, um, a lot of that. Then maybe as you've moved on and you time has gone on, people don't say anything at all. And that's upsetting, right? Because it's still very much alive in your mind and nobody says anything. Like I remember like a lot of times that would be upsetting for me with my husband because I would be upset at my kids' birthday parties and he would have no clue. He'd just be like, it's a happy day. Like, I don't think your parents would want you to be sad. And it's like, yeah, but like that doesn't matter because I am sad. That doesn't matter because I am affected right now. And so I like to have some go-to things that I say. And so that way I am not caught off guard. There was a time where I was very caught off guard. I was at my children's parent-teacher conferences. This was the day that I found out about all the debt that my husband had. I did not know what was going to happen that evening. I did not know if I was going to ask him to move out of the house. I did not know. And so I was very emotionally spent to begin with. And again, mind you, my parents had recently passed away. And I was at parent teacher conferences, and one of the other parents came up and just started asking me all these questions that were private things about my family that really she had no business asking. Like, I thought she had no business asking. She obviously felt differently. Um, and I was so caught off guard. I just fumbled through it the best I could. And then afterwards, I wanted to curl up and die. I couldn't understand how somebody would do that to somebody else. And I'm sure she doesn't remember the encounter at all. It is seared in my brain that day, what she said, what happened, like it is seared in my brain. And so I realized I never want to feel that way again. And so now I have go-to things I say. And sometimes it is as simple as thank you, right? When people say, like, oh, I heard about that. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you, right? Because people really, for the most part, people really do mean well and they want you to know how sorry they are and how bad they feel. But people are so uncomfortable around death and dying. People are so uncomfortable because we're uncomfortable and we're in pain. And we don't like that. We want to help people out of pain. We want to make people feel better because it makes us feel bad and we don't know what to do. And so I like to just first and foremost try to have compassion for those people because they've never gone through this. And so they don't know what to say. And so I like to think that a lot of times people are trying their best. Or if it's like the situation at the parent teacher conferences, sometimes people are just nosy, and that is also a human inclination, and that is fine. Like, it's okay to be human. I have said things and done things that I am not proud of, and I hope that people forgive me as well for those things. So, we're all humans. We all are going to fail. And so I try to have compassion as much as I can. But I also like to have go-to things to say and do so I don't feel that way. So one of the things, like, I'm not going to talk about that right now. I wish that I would have said that or thought of saying that in the parent teacher conferences. I think I wish I just would have said, I'm not going to talk about that right now. Or no, thank you. Or no. No is a complete sentence. If she started talking as I could have just said no, no, no. I think she would have got the message. Um, thank you for your kind words. I cannot talk right now, right? Like sometimes people will come up to you, again, parent teacher conferences, the grocery store, at your work when you're trying to like finish your work. Um, just people come up in the most random places. And I can't talk right now. Okay. Maybe even just I'm not feeling well, but text me, we can catch up later if it's somebody that you really do want to talk to. I also like to say like I need, and then put in I need space right now. I need like just communicating with people, especially the ones that are close to you, like if it's a spouse, it's if it's your friend, if it is a close coworker, communicating with them because they really do want to help and they don't know how to help. So maybe it's I need a nap. I need whatever. Okay. It's just saying thank you. Um, it's okay to also be honest and be like, I don't know what I need right now, but can you check back in with me? Okay. And then I want to talk to you about some things that people can help you with because I think a lot of times like we're so overwhelmed that we really don't know. We don't know what to have people help us with. And we also don't want to be a burden. And we know like we think that people are sick of hearing about our grief. They're sick of hearing about this. And so we tend to not reach out and we tend to isolate. And so when you have a few people that you know want to help, I want you, especially like during the holidays, if you're going to a gathering or going someplace, I want you to rely on people around you. I want you to know, like, okay, I have set myself up for as much success as I can. So whether or not that person shows up for me, I still have a good plan. But I also want you to know it's okay to lean on other people during this time. And so maybe it means, like, again, asking a friend for a ride to and from this party, or maybe even attending with you and saying, okay, like, I really do want to go, but I know I'm only going to be able to stay for about an hour, hour and a half. So when I say this code word, like, that means let's wrap it up. Can you grab my coat? Can you help me get out the door? For me, a lot of times it was explaining to my husband, like, so we have 6 children. Like, when I want to go, I need your help getting the kids. Like I need you to find their boots and their coats and their hats and like gather up whatever water bottles we brought in and like whatever things, I don't know, every time we go places, people give them things. Like, can you I need you to help me with that part of it because I can't. Like I'm checked out. My brain is shut off now. I am like in this sadness and despair. Like I need you to do that part of it. And so maybe it's something like that. Maybe it is having your friend, your family member checking in with you every 30 minutes and just being like, "Hey, do you need to sneak to the bathroom? Do you need a hug? Do you want to go for a little walk?" Like just give them also think like help them with that because you know what you might need. Like give them a list. For me, a lot of times it was like a hug, a distraction, or I need to like I just need some space, right? So give them a few things that help you and say, "Hey, can you please check in with me every 30 minutes? Could you even set a timer on your phone to check in with me every 30 minutes?" And then for you also, this is something I like to tell myself that even if I don't have somebody to do that for me, I can do those things for myself. I can also set a timer on my phone to check in with myself, ask myself, do I need water? Do I need rest? Do I need a distraction? Okay. Like, what do I need? A lot of times, too, I have found that if you're, especially like, for me, I would go sometimes places where like my siblings weren't. And so if my siblings were going to be there, so I have an older sister and a younger brother, if my siblings were going to be there, I felt kind of safe because I knew I was part of a group, right? Like I was part of this group of orphans, of mourners. I was part of the group. And so it felt safe, safety with numbers, right? If I was going to be the only person showing up, it felt very unsafe because I felt like everybody's going to be watching me. Everybody's going to be asking me the questions. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And so just asking again, like your spouse, a friend, somebody to be like, can you just like be with me the whole time? Can you just like not leave my side? Because that can feel like you're the only person in the whole room and it just feels very lonely. And so just saying, hey, like I need somebody just next to me the whole time to just be a physical presence to know that I'm not alone, that like they're not coming after me. Like I'm not surviving this on my own. I have somebody with me. Okay. And then also very briefly, um, I want to make sure I fit everything in, but very briefly to know that if you decide to stay home and to not go to the events and to not do the things, like that is okay too. But I also want you to have a plan for what that looks like because so often we tend to shut ourselves away and we don't have an end game. We don't have an end plan of, okay, how long is this going to be for? Like, and then it just goes on and becomes very easy to then the friends stop checking in, the people stop inviting you places. Um, it becomes easy for that to happen. And then it becomes easy for us to be upset because nobody's reaching out. Nobody understands what I'm going through. I'm going through this alone. And so again, just to have compassion for them that I don't think they mean to do that, but they're really trying to model what you showed them. And so if you show like, okay, I'm not going to go, that's fine. But to know that's your decision, okay? And so then what do you want to set your day up to look like? Maybe it means like I'm just going to watch movies all day. I'm going to order in. I'm going to have a glass of wine and then I'm going to go to bed. Maybe it means I want to read a book all day. Maybe it means I'm going to have a bubble bath. Like whatever it is that like makes you know that you're cared for. Maybe it means I'm just going to stay in bed and cry all day. That's fine. But I want you to have a plan for the next day. Okay. And so when we go through the holidays, when we are going on this journey through grief, we have two choices. We can go it alone or we can walk in grief together. And either one is fine. And I want to say that again. I want to normalize either one is fine. What I have found is there are times where I do want to go it alone. I don't want to talk to anybody about it. I want to be left alone. And that is fine. There's other times where like I know I'm really struggling. I want to talk to somebody and I've tried to find people, family, friends, whoever, but they don't understand. They give me the cliche things. And so that is what I am here for. If you are ready to walk together in your grief, like that's what I am here for. I here's some testimonials. Like I said in the beginning, I have so much experience with grief. I have experience with anticipatory grief. I have experience with unexpected grief, expected grief. I have experience with grief in my professional, at work, trying to not show the grief. And so, keep working as a nurse, like don't let people see that you're sad. But it does come out. It comes out in every way. And so even grief that other people don't acknowledge is not as socially acceptable as I said, marriage struggles. Maybe you're going through a divorce. Like all these things cause grief. Maybe you just got lost your job. Maybe you don't feel like it was justified, right? And you're grieving that, and you really thought this was going to be the job that you were going to have forever. And you're sad and you feel like you're starting over again. Grief comes up so many different ways. And so, again, I have so much experience in all the different areas of grief. And so, I really invite you to book a free grief consult call with me. And in this call, we talk about what you're going through. And by the end of it, we come up with a plan of what's best for you. And everybody is different in their grief. Everybody is somewhere else on the grief journey. Said, I have a brother and a sister. At no point were we at the same spot. Grief looks so different to so many different people. And so I think a lot of what keeps us stuck in our grief is thinking that what I'm going through is not normal because my grief doesn't look like their grief. my grief doesn't look like that one over there or that person's. Like what I'm going through is not normal. So I want you to come and talk with me. I didn't get much time to talk on this, but I do help you if because therapy, counseling, and coaching are very different. And so sometimes people need different things. And so I help you navigate that. I help you show you if I'm not the right person, like what path that I want to encourage you on next. Okay. And so it brings a feeling of relief and hope just by talking to me because you come up with a plan for what to do next. And so I just want you guys to have the very best Christmas that you can, um, very best New Year's, very best holidays all coming up. So, um, if you have any questions, please let me know. I said in the beginning, you can put them in the Q&A. We do have a few more minutes, but I'll put in the chat here. I'm gonna put my link again here if I can. Um, but you can always email me at nursegriefcoaching.com to, no, just kidding, nursegriefcoaching@outlook.com. If you have any questions, anything that's coming up. I said, so oftentimes we think like something's wrong with me, this isn't normal. And so I just want everybody like to know that most of the time that is not true. Okay. Sometimes there are times where I recommend therapy or whatever for somebody, but that still doesn't mean that it's not normal. It it just means that's where you're at in your journey. And so to help people with that is my goal. So okay, let me drop the link again for the free call. Again, I encourage everybody, please, like book the call. Book the call. You will feel better. Okay, I think that went in there. Okay, so there is the link for that. Let me check the Q&A quick to see if there's any questions. Otherwise, I don't want to keep you guys. I want to make sure that I stick to an hour under because I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So, again, please let me put my email, nursegriefcoaching@outlook.com. Feel free to email me and any questions, any concerns. Again, if you don't feel comfortable posting it here, I will respond. Sometimes it goes in the junk mail, so I try to check that every day, every other day to try to make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. So, um, but anyway, I will be running this webinar every week, so please share it with friends. Anybody else that you know that are grieving, you can go to nursegriefcoaching.com, have them sign up. Or if you just want to join again and you're like, you know what, I missed the first part of it, or you know what, I really wish I would have asked these questions. Like I'm going to join live again. So please feel free to join again, nursegriefcoaching@outlook.com, and book the free consult. And I will talk with you guys soon. And I'm praying for you guys. And I hope that you guys have the best possible day that you can.